Okay, we're all here. Good morning, everyone. Just want to say thanks for joining us this morning. Thanks for tuning into The Juice. Been having a really great time each week hosting panels of really interesting people talking about how different businesses have been affected by the COVID shutdown. And so this week, we're focusing on sports, sports teams, sports venues. And so this will be a really interesting discussion. I want to introduce everybody first. So first, Murphy Ackerman, who is our Stark Garden marketing guru. And she has morphed into being our production person for all of our online events. So we're really grateful that she's like risen to this occasion in many, many ways. So that's really cool. I am Laurie Supinski with Stark Garden, Program Director. We have Lewis Robinson, who is with Midwest United soccer team. He is the Director of Coaching. We have Steve Jbara, who is, oh my gosh, President of GSI. And then we have Jim Jarecki, who is Vice President and General Manager of the West Michigan Whitecaps. So we have three different sports represented. And we're going to talk a little bit about how, like Midwest United is a youth sports organization, so a soccer club. The other two are representing teams that represent professional sports and then the venues as well. So I think it'll be really interesting to hear how not only are the sports affected, the players, the venues, and then we have to think about sports as a business. I think most of us at some point in time, a lot of us have, and our kids have desired to, become a professional athlete at some point. And so we have a really emotional attachment to watching sports and playing sports, but it is a business. And so at times like this, when everything's been shut down, people want to see sports. You want to go back to feeling normal, watch sports on TV, get to go to games and either watch your kids or watch professionals, but there's a business aspect to it too that has to be considered. And then of course there's all the health and safety questions about resuming play. So those are a lot of the things I think we're going to talk about this morning. So I'm really excited to hear what everybody has to say. And as usual, we want everybody that's watching to feel free to make comments and also questions. So in no particular order, we will start out. And why don't, Lewis, why don't you tell us about Midwest United?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Laurie. I appreciate it, guys. And, my name's Lewis Robinson. I'm the Director of Coaching with Midwest United FC. We are a fairly large non-profit organization based in Grand Rapids. For the most part, we deal with youth soccer. So we offer programming, kind of 10 to 12 month programming year-round, soccer programs from 4-year-olds starters to 18, 19-year-old elite level players. Some teams that travel around the country, play on a national stage. Typically we're graduating about 50 kids to college every year. We have a senior women's team that plays in the UWS, which is kind of the minor leagues of women's soccer, and we affiliate pretty strongly with Grand Rapids FC on the men's side. As our men's senior platform as well.
Great. So, I guess we'll come back. So we'll come back and kind of morph into what's happening right now. Steve, tell us about the drive.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Laurie. So we are an NBA G League team. We're affiliated with the Detroit Pistons. This will be next season will be our 7th year, so we're still technically on hiatus from our 6th season. We had about 5 home games left in playoffs when kind of everything got shut up. But that's really the quick and dirty on who we are.
Okay, awesome. Jim, Whitecap.
Yeah, Jim Jarecki, Vice President, General Manager of the Whitecaps. We are affiliated with the Detroit Tigers. We were entering into our 27th season, and our 25th with the Tigers. So it's been a good run there, and obviously the Grand Rapids connection with the Drive and the Whitecaps and the Griffins. I mean, with the Detroit affiliates, we're very, very fortunate. Obviously to be in this market and obviously run Fifth Third Ballpark, which normally will play 70 home games. And when I look out today and thinking that we would have had 11 o'clock game with about 6,000 kids on a field trip and making memories and eating hot dogs and drinking Pepsis today, it's a little gut wrenching. But as we'll talk a little further, you mentioned, Laurie, about the business. It's also the fact that we're all seasonal businesses, and that's where it's really, really taken more of an effect about what we do. But we have events at the ballpark all year round too. So obviously some of the stuff we're focusing on that, but primarily right now we are at the mercy of what Major League Baseball does, and if and when the minor league baseball players get back at it yet this season.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit, and we can talk about the NBA as well as Major League Baseball and some of the other sports. I mean, it seems like, obviously you guys have to follow the direction of the NBA and Major League Baseball as far as seasons either restarting or beginning at all. And right now there's talks with all of the different sports about how to restart their seasons. And I know like NBA is talking about having the rest of the season perhaps being played down in Florida. Major League Baseball right now is talking about having maybe a different kind of season, negotiating player contracts. And so there's so many things that go into bringing those sports back up. How does that affect, what does that do for the Whitecaps and the Drive?
Well, I think from the baseball standpoint, what it does is we're sitting in the background just like everybody else. In fact, we laugh amongst ourselves because what we hear on ESPN or The Athletic or the Bleacher Report, it's usually stuff that we hear at the same time. So there's really no heads up. In the sit and watch the latest developments with Major League Baseball, it's kind of ironic. I was talking with my wife the other day going, it's interesting that NHL might get going, soccer may get going, and basketball may get going in the summertime, and baseball's sitting back, debating about, should we get prorated again? And, I see both sides of the story. But minor league baseball players, there's no union, so they are really sitting at home, just like all of us are, waiting to hear if they're going to play. Unfortunately, we're really at a situation where they got to get Major League Baseball going first. And I really think that we're probably third or fourth on the list because of the fact that, once they get Major League Baseball going, then they got to decide if they're going to send all these players out to 160 different cities in a short duration of time, i.e., they would have to pay these players. And that's the last thing that they really want to do from an ownership standpoint is let any more money come out of that faucet based on what they're looking at. We don't have TV rights like Major League Baseball does. So, I mean, it does us absolutely no good to open up the ballpark and play before no fans. And obviously with the safety guidelines, CDC, and everything and health issues that are happening, that just adds, just a complete different element and layer to the whole aspect of reopening.
Wow. So, so if the season does start, you will start, but you'll have to do different guidelines, different, the stadium would look different. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, obviously the seating capacity, I mean, you're seeing that all around about, different venues about what they're looking at, whether the percentages, I mean, heck, we can't do more than 10 people, at a social gathering right now in the state of Michigan until June 12th. And, so we're looking at those aspects about how would the concessions, how would the restrooms, how would the clubhouses, how would these guys travel? I mean, they say the whole aspect about let's play these games. Well, you also have to think about on the background about how are these players going to get there? How are the workers going to get there? And then when they're there, what type of interaction can you truly have?
Right. And Steve, I'm assuming that's the same for the Drive.
Yeah, we're pretty similar. So, the difference between Jim and I is, our season was almost finished. So we had 5 games left, and then looking at hopefully, the playoffs shortly thereafter when everything started and, the Pistons were in the mix of, all the kind of COVID madness with, they had played the Utah Jazz, who had a player that tested positive. We had a couple of our players up on the Pistons. And so there was a lot of mix. The guys came back to market. So anyway, that's sort of where we had our hard stop. And, from there, we're following kind of lockstep with the NBA. So, they're figuring out their different models. It looks like, they're leaning towards this Disney aspect. So they need a location where every player they can go through and sort of sterilize and bomb the entire facility on a daily basis. They can test guys on the way in. They have to be a campus approach where, they can have everything they need on campus. They can eat and live and practice and all the other stuff. And then, the difficult part is, we were talking about before, but a lot of these guys haven't picked up a basketball recently. And so there needs to be a window for training camp to start. There needs to be a window for, some scrimmage elements, for some of these teams. If there's going to be a regular season, these games are important if they want to make the playoffs. And then even in our case, it like Jim was talking about, our guys are all on 1-year contracts. Their contracts typically expire April 30th. And so, yes, there can be extensions granted and stuff, but these guys are all at home. They're all looking for what they're going to do next year and looking, towards what would have been summer league and some of the other things. So I find it hard to believe it would be worth it for the NBA to bring back our season as again, we were almost completed. But for the NBA, obviously they're going to do everything they can to get these games in. And then looking at next year, we're looking already at scenarios with, there's really a full season. We're looking at, more of a social distance scenario with fans, no fans, and then, potentially no season at all. So. Right.
Wow. Oh my God. And then Lewis, for organized youth sports, there's all kinds of things happening all over the country. I mean, some states have started, and some states haven't. So what are you seeing and hearing with regard to soccer or any other kind of youth sports?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of like what Jim and Steve said. Like we're all just kind of waiting, and I think we talked about earlier how it seems like we're going to be last on the list here in Michigan. When you go through the country, it seems like we're going to be right last as far as the window to reopen. I know around the country in different states, some are reopened fully, some are gradually getting back to it, and I think we'll follow that. My personal belief is we're going to be a month or so behind a lot of our neighboring states, if you will. But yeah, we're a little bit different in that we don't rely on obviously the spectators to run and be maybe that main stakeholder in the business side of things, like you mentioned. So our main goal is the athlete. So we're really finding ways through this time to continue to train, to continue to engage, to continue to keep players developing the best that we can, which is really hard. And definitely we're getting to a point now where I feel like everybody's getting a little bit bored of it and fed up with it and wants to be back on a field competing and scoring goals and with their friends. But that's what we've been doing. I mean, we're working hard with our facilities, and we're lucky that we own some beautiful training facilities in town that we can control and we can keep safe. And like you mentioned, I think they'll definitely, for the foreseeable future, there'll be some differences in the game as far as spectators and parents and fans won't be able to watch much. But ultimately for us, it's always about the player anyway. So as soon as we can get the players back on the field, we'll look to do that as soon as we get an update from. Right now, we're just really waiting on governor updates, and then I'm sure we'll be working with the insurance agencies and the governing bodies that cover the insurance piece of things, which always mandates when we can actually physically get on the field with the players. But as soon as that comes through, we'll be hopefully right back to it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, mentally, I think people definitely, want to see sports come back. It makes us feel normal. It's it's one of the great pleasures that we have, whether you're watching it in person or whether, we're watching something on television. I know our family is a big soccer family, and we were pretty excited a couple weeks ago when the German Bundesliga started live games again. And, we're watching on TV, and here are these massive stadiums in Germany, and the players are coming out on the field with masks on, and then they're taking the masks off to play the game. There's no fans, and in the stadium, so there's this echo sound, and all you can hear is the soccer players, like you actually hear the sound of the game. You hear the players, yelling at each other, and so it was kind of weird, but it was good because it was live. But then the following week, some of the home team or some of the games have been broadcasting fan noise. So they're introducing, fan noise into the game. And obviously somebody's coordinating that, because when a goal gets scored or when something happens, the noise is reflecting the play. So it's really interesting. But I guess what I'd love to talk about is just the fact that while we want to see that, and we think that kids are going to run back to wanting to play sports, is that really, we don't really know. I mean, like we were talking the other day, you don't know how many parents or kids are going to say, okay, I'm ready to come back. And your team and your club rely on the fees and everything else. So it's kind of hard to plan for that. And I think it would be the same, obviously, for the Drive and the Whitecaps. We think people are enthusiastic and want to come back, but is that really a reality? And how does that work? So maybe each one of you can kind of address that.
Yeah, I can definitely touch. I mean, I'll tell you, our pulse is, we have about 1,500 kids and families within the club, and I can tell you the pulse of the majority of that group is they're itching to get back to it tomorrow. And that's soccer, and I'm sure it speaks for Jim and Steve's world as well, is just getting back to watch and support. Like the kids are itching for it, Now it's our job to make sure that it's safe and that it's a safe environment, which it always is. But I know in our world, the kids and most of the families, I think when it does get back, it will be optional as well, right? It'll be an option if you're comfortable to send your kid to practice, or you're comfortable to play in a game on Saturday in Detroit or in Lansing, then it's up to you. But I know that, and then I think from a spectator side, I know where Jim and Steve have to deal with is, like, I know I've become a huge UFC fan lately, and become a big golf fan just because they were the first ones back, man. I tell you, with 3 months with no watching reruns, like, I think as soon as people are itching to go watch a game and just see competition and see smiles on faces and see, winners and losers, right? I mean, that's a big part of our lives. It's a big part of our sanity, and some of us live by that, So I think that's the pulse I have. I'm sure there'll be some that don't share it and don't feel the same, but I know there's a huge group of people right now that are itching for it, for sure.
Yeah, I think the aspect there is that one of my fears right now is how long is it going to take for people to come back?
Right.
I mean, we are predicated on social gathering. When in the off season, I get my fix when I go see the Drive game. I mean, you walk into the arena and you have that atmosphere, and you see people, you fist bump, and I mean, only sports do you turn around and you high five somebody that you completely don't know because your team just scored a run, and the excitement of that, and looking at the replays of all these old games and whatnot, the crowds, how tight we were sitting. I remember hearing something yesterday about Notre Dame football. I mean, if you've been to a Notre Dame game, I mean, you talk about, you don't get feet of seat, you get inches of seats. I mean, every year they take another inch away, and you're on top of each other. But I think the hesitancy is people are going to be, I want to go, but I don't want to go. I'd rather watch it first and then get into that. I think, Lewis, you're talking about that. You got a percentage of parents that you're going to have parents that are totally afraid of letting their kids even talk to other kids right now, while others are going to go full force into it. So we're looking at this saying, what's our attendance going to look like next year? I mean, let alone this year, which we're suffering right now, but even next year, how do you forecast that with the idea of, like, come out to the ballpark as a group, come up to the suite where you've got 20 people in a confined space, come out and sit next to somebody, as a group, what can you do and not fully enjoy that and be hesitant about, being in that space of people. So I think they will come back. I think sports is one thing that has always come back. In fact, we've always been that beacon of, when things go bad, people come out for their sports relief, and they come out to the baseball games and really forget about things for 3 hours. And right now we can't provide that. So it's going to be very interesting. And I go through my own mind about how am I going to react to going back to sports, playing and or attending.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I think both the guys nailed it. You know, we do summer camps for kids. We do like 7 of them, week-long camps in the summer, and it's a huge part not only of you know, something we like to do for the community, but it's a big like brand thing for us too. We want to get a couple hundred kids out there rocking drive shirts and playing ball in the summer, and then their parents get exposed to the organization and all the other stuff. So that's going to be a big miss for us next year. But I do think, you know, I think it's probably optimistic of me, and you know, Jim and I probably need to be that way. But you know, I'm as big a sport fan as you'll find, and even I'm getting sick of watching, you know, reruns of old finals games and old football games and old, you know, baseball World Series with, you know, with the Tigers and whatnot. And so I still think there's an element, like Jim touched on, for live sports, as I, you know, sat at home last weekend watching marble racing, so, you know, but again, we ask ourselves the same thing: when is somebody going to feel comfortable getting back into the arena? And I think from a perception perspective, you know, the Whitecaps, you know, being an outdoor venue, and there's some, you know, again, we all know what we know what we don't know. There's wind and there's space and there's some other things. Maybe you feel more comfortable breathing. We're indoors in the winter. People are, you know, so it'll be interesting. Obviously, we hope, you know, I think a lot of it depends on when, you know, maybe this vaccine is created or whatever the, you know, testing updates. But I'm sure, you know, going into next season, we'll all have to have some element of testing in the door and some other things that, you know, could deter people. But hopefully, you know, again, the need for live entertainment is still there. So hopefully they can kind of push through.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way too. I think right now we're still in the throes of it all. And so there's so many unknowns, and, you know, people are scared, understandably, but yet there's this desire to get back to normal. And we might never see it completely the way it was, but I think, you know, time kind of heals things. And so, like Steve, you said, you know, if there's a vaccine, or if we start to see where procedures are implemented so people feel safer. So whether it's, you know, you get tested at the door before you walk into a venue, you know, I mean, it seems strange, but I would do it. I mean, you know, if it seemed like that was going to be the way to make it work, then people have to adapt to that. But I guess, you know, it all also boils down to the viability of sports again as a business. For all the measures that have to be put in place, you know, hopefully that adds up to making sense, a business sense for the teams and for the sports. So, you know, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I think I do think it comes back, but does it come back enough that it makes sense and it's practical?
Well, I think it's the thing. We all have that math to do, and being all affected by this. I mean, it's going to come down to the percentage of that. I mean, how much can I have in the ballpark? I mean, if I have a 9,000 seat stadium like I do, if they tell me 25%, I'm looking at 22 to 2,500 people in the ballpark on a Saturday night in July when I'm normally getting 7,000. So, you know, you got to do those equations, and then obviously you're going to backtrack that, just like all the other seasonal businesses. Lewis, I mean, obviously you got to recalculate how many kids you can have in a camp or thing. And Steve, the same thing with you on the attendance side of things is what can you do then operationally? And obviously that's goes downhill as far as, you know, what are you going to spend for staff? What are you going to, you know, how are you going to staff the ballpark? How are you going to, you know, do the promotions? And, you know, what are you going to really invest in that? I mean, you know, a typical game, if we do fireworks and we do an live entertainer, we do a promo giveaway. I mean, obviously we're investing in the fans to give them that entertainment, but it does cost, obviously, to put that show on. Are we going to be able to do that type of performance that the fans are used to? And that's what we want to do. I mean, you know, we want to have the best scenario. Whether I've got 200 people in that ballpark on an April, you know, Tuesday night, or 8,000, it's going to be that same type of show that we're going to put in front of people, so they leave the ballpark feeling good about it, and knowing that you know, that it was definitely worth their time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, you know, we're all we're all selling sponsorships. So Lewis, Jim, myself, we're all, working on sponsorship, which is predicated on people being in the building. So without eyeballs on sponsorship, those are kind of fruitless as well. So, it really comes down, for us anyway, of we need people in the stands, or a lot of this kind of starts to fade and becomes a pretty tough, math equation, to Jim's point of being able to support a season and a team. And again, keeping, we've pride ourselves on keeping it, obviously a good entertainment value, but also treating the players right and housing them correctly and feeding them, as best we can and things like that, which we've seen has all delivered better results as we've gone along as far as performance and stuff. And so to maintain some of those things, again, we're going to rely on, people showing up and then, sponsors and everybody acting sort of as they have in the past.
Yeah. But I mean, what about innovation and making changes that you might never have thought about before? I mean, if you look at so many different industries who have been hit uniquely, one of the hardest hit industries is the restaurant business. And so restaurants are, had to pivot quickly if they could to doing takeout. That was pretty much the only option. Now that eventually we think restaurants are going to start to come back online, sadly, some of them are not going to. Some of them wouldn't and haven't weathered the storm. But then some of them will come back with reduced capacity. Some of them now who never thought they would do takeout before are having that as part of their business model. The city of Grand Rapids is working right now to open up social spaces for restaurants, which is something, that was never in the cards before, where, public spaces can now be used for people to congregate outside with food, with drinks. There's efforts underway to make things work, but they're different. And so do you see any innovation coming out of this that you would never have thought about before? For
yeah, I think I can start in our business. I know I agree with what you're saying, Laurie. I think challenging times always creates change, and it always creates some fantastic innovation and some ideas that we've never had before. I know in our industry, just speaking from the coach and development side of things, which I know in Jim's and Steve's organizations they touched on is big as well for the players. We're being able to do things that we've never done before, right? We're getting to see what we can do from home. The players, I think, and in our organization, I'm sure in all sports, they're learning the value, which may have been lost in the last couple of generations, of what they can do on their own, right? What can you do with 3 hours of time and a court or a half field or a front yard to get better, which I think is really cool. And in the life lesson piece of things, I think as coaches, organizations, we're finding out what we can do on calls like this, what we can do in Zoom calls, what we can do in video analysis and things like that we've never really done much of before. So I think that's all there. But ultimately, like we've touched on, the big piece that is 90% of sport for a lot of people is the experience. And I think you can't replicate that. You can't replicate the playing in the tournament and scoring the winning goal and losing and winning and whether it's the parents on the sideline or whether it's thousands of fans. I mean, there's no way. And that's a big piece that I think the majority like about sport. The athlete piece is really important for us, but I just think until we get that back fully, and we're looking at ways with our women's senior team that we can live stream some games when we get back, and we can do some things like that maybe we haven't dabbled with as much before. And is there a sponsorship piece of that? Maybe, but again, it's not going to be the same if there's not thousands of fans on the sideline singing, cheering, booing, and having that experience on the game,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the best thing that's going to come out of this whole thing is we are going to learn, and we're forced to think outside that box. And just like the entrepreneurs that are all over, this has forced me personally to start thinking, what would I do if I didn't have baseball? It's my career, and this has been my career. It's been in the management of the front office of baseball for my entire career, and I've always had that side thought, okay, can I do anything else? Would I do anything else? And this is what's forcing you to do it, to learn how to do these Zoom calls, to learn how to interact and how to treat people. I think the idea that every single one of us is in the same situation that somehow, some way, we have that empathy, and I think that's coming back a little bit, and people are understanding a little bit more. But I like the idea of where it's forcing us to think outside the box. The restaurants thing, some of that stuff won't ever go away. I mean, you're going to see restaurants that are going to do curbside service from now on moving forward. What are we going to do at the ballpark? What do we do at the arenas? I mean, it's going to force us to think about seating configurations, or it's going to think about what type of promotions we're going to do. And it also, I think, ultimately, though, it's going to think, how do we take care of ourselves health wise? Where before, when there's 35 guys in the clubhouse, and you're not thinking exactly about how to, hygiene and taking care of your personal space. Now it's going to be a little bit more on that, and we're going to be, I think, better off for it once we get on the backside of this.
Yeah. So we're in an interesting place. The G League and having the NBA kind of as our backbone has been super forward in some of their thinking through like digital, and our games are always available. So we've done Facebook, we've done YouTube, most recently we've done Twitch. We get the traditional outlets on NBA TV. We get a couple of the ESPN Plus. So that's always been available. The difficult thing, the NBA's kind of leading the way on this VR stuff too. I think MLB is as well. Where you can sit at home and essentially be at a courtside seat, and you turn to the left and turn to the right and follow the game, which is really, really awesome. But if even the average Grand Rapids consumer has the option between watching, the Grand Rapids Drive play the Westchester Knicks, or watching, the Detroit Pistons face off against the LA Lakers on the same platform, it'd be a stretch to think that that's, a model that would work for minor league sports. I mean, we won't have the viewership that we can't compete with, some of the big guys, or, you'd find me probably glancing back and forth between program and program. So, but again, thinking through the seating thing is interesting, thinking through, what different ways can we maybe deliver some of the media if we can't get everybody in the arena next year. It kind of goes back to, more of a soccer really format, with getting sort of a cult following, and how do we get people to tune in, on a Tuesday night to a game that's only available, online. So we really have to go back to the drawing board as far as marketing for doing something that, if that becomes the reality of what minor league sports comes to, because again, we need eyes, we need viewership. Without that, we won't get sponsorship, we don't get the other stuff. So that'll be an interesting challenge for sure to kind of hit the reset button on.
Yeah. And I think it's also the thing is this has really forced us to think about this. I mean, if we would have sat down 4 months ago and say, let's come up with the worst scenario. Somebody would have said, hey, there's a pandemic and we're going to be locked in our houses and we can't do any physical activities. I would have been thrown out of the ballpark and said, you're crazy, go find something else to do. And if I would have written a college essay paper on that, the professor probably would have said, see me, type thing. But, I think that aspect of it is, okay, we are in the worst situation that we have. I mean, I experienced a fire at the ballpark back in 2014 in January 3rd, and we opened up. And the difference there is that we actually had a deadline. We knew we were going to be opening up. So, that was three and a half months or whatever. And it's something I never wanted to go through again. And now we're going through a worse situation from a business standpoint that, I did some quick math. I mean, we're looking at, if we don't play a game this year based on the decisions made by Major League Baseball, minor league baseball, we're going to go 589 days without a baseball game at Fifth Third Ballpark. And as a seasonal business, that hurts a lot. We're going to do other events. We do a lot of facility events. We do the Christmas Light Show and the Beer Fest. But to just give you an example about, okay, what are you going to do in your primary business, which we have 70 games to make our money? What are you going to do on those things? Those are the type of things that keep me up at night now.
Yep.
Right. Well, and Jim, you said something a little bit ago, and I just wanted to come back to this because I've thought about this too, is we're now focusing laser focused on our health and, our health, and then how our health affects others and others affects us. And I think we always wanted to think, I guess, or thought we were, a very sanitary society. But if you think about how many times you've been in public places before this, where people have been there with the flu or with colds, or, people are sneezing around you and, coughing and sneezing, and we accept we accepted that. We might not have liked it, but we were definitely in situations like that. And now I don't think we're going to find ourselves in that situation anytime soon. And maybe innovating around that is going to be better in the long run for everybody. Makes us much more conscientious. I don't know, but it's a really interesting thing to think about because
I mean, obviously the high point, you're telling people to sneeze into their elbow and use hand sanitizer, and that was basically about it, and wash your hands. Now you think about every single thing. I mean, I walk around the ballpark and the staff kind of gets on me, but you're always bending down in a good way because you're picking up trash and you're picking up any type of litter or cup on the concourse or in the parking lot. And now I go back and I think about that. Who touched that type of stuff, and what do I do with it? But that's what my DNA is, to keep the ballpark looking good. But it definitely makes you stop and think about how you're going to do those things, and whether the touch points, I don't know who to believe if
Right.
they say the stuff sits on a surface, but I was just thinking about the foul balls that go in the stands. Now stay with me on this one. Before the game, the umpires will take the baseballs and they'll put the Mississippi mud on there. So they're rubbing the baseballs. They put them in a bag. The bat boy hands the ball to the umpire. The umpire throws it to the pitcher. The pitcher throws it to the hitter. Hitter hits it. The infielder takes it. And then, hey, if you got a foul ball, then it goes into the stands. You got 15 people touching a baseball. And if people are freaked out about something like that, we got to get back to all right, this is what life's going to be like. And, you take the basketball, goes in the stands. I mean, I was sitting there when one of my friends got the ball went into the stands, and the excitement of getting a basketball, for that one moment. Soccer ball goes out, you got to go chase those things. It's those things that just start piling up. But it's going to be interesting to see how people react.
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying before that I was reading a little bit earlier on youth soccer, and each the Specialty Sports Association has come out with different guidelines for each of the youth sports coming back on board. So each of the directors has come up with sports specific protocol. And so one of the things they were talking about was in soccer, and maybe instead of doing a throw in when the ball goes out, you do a kick in. And it's like, okay, but ultimately, at some point during the game, you're not supposed to touch the soccer ball, but you do. I mean, so what is that really? A kick in? Is that just for show, or is that really?
Yeah. I think there's some pieces, right, which I think, and I've read a lot of this as well. I think there's some pieces that maybe there's a part of it that we all have to make some of the families feel comfortable. Like I think, as Jim said, what I've seen at our facilities already. I mean, we already have plans in place to stack the place with sanitized stations. We're probably going to be doing away with the old dirty bathrooms with 2 stalls in them, right? They're just going to be closed down. They're just not going to be available or a thing anymore for us. So these are all good things that will just help with everyday healthy lifestyle, I think. And these are positives that will come out of it. But yeah, there's rules like the talk of each kid has to have their own ball. I think everyone's going to be walking around with a sanitizer, right? They're going to be sanitizing. We're probably going to see lawsuits in 15 years time suing Clorox, so everybody's hands are going to be falling off because they've got so much going on. But I think those things will happen. But there's some things, I mean, maybe as the sport purist, there's some things you can't change. I mean, I've been watching those German Bundesliga professional league games. I mean, they're having the subs sit 10 yards apart from each other down the sideline. I'm like, you can't do that, right? I mean, you can't play our sport in a mask. I know there's been talks of that. Some things, it's just once you get the testing and that hopefully the athletes are safe, then I think there's some things that can't be changed in the sport, right? You can't change the rules of kick-ins to throw-ins and things like that. I mean, people are just going to want to get back to a normal, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, same with soccer. I've been watching those games as well, so I think a lot of it is optics, and that's fine. I think people need that for of feeling like the players are safe and everything else. But you're right. They've got the subs sitting on the side with masks on, sitting 10 feet apart, 10 chairs apart, and then you get out on the soccer field, and I mean, they're right up next to each other.
Well, I saw one. I don't know if you saw the game. They've said there's no celebrations allowed. So when you score a goal, you're not allowed to high five or you're not allowed to hug. So they're scoring a goal, and their instinct is to kind of run and celebrate as they do, and then they all kind of stop each other like this. Which again, maybe it's a perception thing for the government and for everything like that. But I think if you're going to allow these guys to tackle each other and sweat on each other and head a ball and that, like, then, I mean, it gets to a point where it is a bit of a show in some of the areas. And I think we'll be the same. Like, our coaching staff, when we do get back, we'll all be wearing masks, and kids will be tested at least for the temperature before every practice, and those things. That'll definitely be in place. But again, there's that mask when a coach is shouting and yelling, and you know, the kids are competing with each other. You can argue what effect that will have on people.
Yeah. I think the big thing is the safety of the facilities and anywhere you go. I mean, you think about it, a number of years ago, I mean, you know, we started worrying about security of the ballpark, you know, coming into the ballpark with wines or, you know, walkthroughs and bag checks and things like that. And that was our biggest concern, and rightfully so. And now this is just on top of that. Unfortunately, this thing is an invisible aspect of what we're doing. But, you know, our whole goal is to make sure that people feel safe. People are going to go to places where they feel safe. And, you know, we have to do that on a daily basis. Laurie, your thing, the word optics is definitely one that we are going to definitely have to make sure that we've got more employees to make sure that we're either, you know, checking temperatures or cleaning restrooms, or, you know, making sure that people are social distancing. So it you know, that's going to add to it. But again, the ultimate thing is that people will go where they feel safe. And you know, I've always said that the ballpark, people come because they want to have a good time, they want to see some good entertainment, and they want to feel safe. You know, we're a ballpark where the kids can, you know, you can sit and watch the game and let the kids run down the Meyer playground and you know, have some fun, you know, for a couple innings there, and know that they're going to come back without any issues. And, you know, we're going to still live by that and promote that aspect of it. This just adds another layer to the health and sanitary conditions of a facility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I really do believe, and like Steve said before, maybe, you know, this is being optimistic, but I do believe that, you know, we're all in shock right now, and it's like, so the world is turned upside down, and so people are scared, and we're thinking, you know, you want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you kind of can't yet, and so we're thinking that so many things are going to be changed forever, and I think that's true to a certain extent, but I also do think that once people start feeling comfortable, things will get back to maybe a new normal, but close to normal, because I don't think we as a society are going to allow ourselves to just be so distant and non-social. You know, I don't think we survive like that. So I think innovation will come out of this, you know, for ways.
Do you guys think there'll be a big inflation in cost for consumer with limiting people?
Oh, you mean?
Yeah, like and maybe Steve can touch on it for the drive, but as Jim mentioned, if you take a Notre Dame stadium that holds 80,000 people and you only put 20,000 people in it, and a ticket normally costs $100, like, do you think there's a real risk in your organizations and others around the country? Will that price suddenly become $400? Or close to, right? I mean, is that a reality or not?
I think from an aspect from our standpoint, no. I think major sorry about that.
Okay. Start over. Part of that.
Yeah. I think from the major facilities, major cities, Lewis, that's going to be an issue. I think from our market size of where we are, myself, Steve, the Griffins, I mean, we're something unique. And that's where the family entertainment aspect, we're affordable from a standpoint of, you know, what people can do in this type of market, but still having that less capacity, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt big time. You know, we're not going to be the ones that are going to go in there. We're going to double our ticket prices just to make it up. I mean, we just can't do that. You know, and I think, to Laurie, your point, we're going to come back, you know, but it's going to be a 2-year cycle, I would imagine. I mean, from a baseball standpoint, if we don't play, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the winter sports. And it's going to, you know, if people feel comfortable going back to, I mean, when's the next time you're going to go to a concert? You know, I would bet the over on that one for sure. As far as what it would be, but I want to get back to that. You know, I want to get there with my wife and some friends and go enjoy a concert at the ballpark. But when is that going to happen?
I remember with the UFC thing I touched on, I remember actually saying to a friend, and I'm not a huge UFC fan, but when that first pay-per-view event came on, and I think it's normally like $60 to pay, I remember telling someone, like, I will pay any amount of money for this pay-per-view tonight, right? And like, I don't know if the same goes for your businesses. I'm like, I don't care if it's 200, 500. Like, I just want to see someone compete with someone. If I have to pay double to pay these guys, like, I don't know. That was a piece where I thought, like, to get it back, it was got to that desperate, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Murphy, do we have comments or questions?
Yes, we do have a question from Laura Vaughn. Good morning, Laura. Sorry if we covered this, but how different will it be for the players to play without fans?
Well, I'm a huge Laura Vaughn fan, but also, yeah, no, we actually had that conversation with our players. So we call them up, and we were, everybody's in the same situation where nobody knows, right? So NBA players aren't sure, the G League guys aren't sure, my staff is a little unsure. So we just had an open conversation about what each one of these different scenarios means. And as you look, obviously atmosphere is a huge part, and you look at statistics for teams that play at home and play at home in the playoffs, and I mean there's a huge correlation with winning and having a home atmosphere. And I think it's especially so in the minor league level, because we're not going, we're not playing games in some of the huge arenas that'll be sold out regardless, right? We're going to sort of smaller cities, maybe the venue isn't as good, and so having doing those steps and getting there commercially, and then having no fans is tough for these guys, because a lot of the players on our team played at North Carolina last year, played at Duke last year, played Michigan State, and so they're used to having these massive crowds and massive atmosphere, and it helps them play, it helps motivate them, and it helps it's part of the game. And so that would be really tough. I know on our guys, it was the feedback we were getting, and I'm sure that's the exact same on the NBA level, where that's it's a huge part of sports.
I mean,
I think from our case, our guys being at the minor league level, they're used to not really seeing a lot of crowds. They got a number of guys that come from larger colleges that they may get some fans, but as they work their way up, they see more fans. And obviously at Fifth Third Ballpark, we pack them in there on some really good nights. But I think overall, more the business side that we would suffer from the business side of it if we didn't have any fans.
But I mean, just on the opposite end of the spectrum for the players, I mean, I understand how it would be hard to play without the fans. I mean, that's a motivating factor. But on the other hand, they're also playing to further their careers. So as hard as it is to play without fans, they're still getting to play. And so I think, from a personal development standpoint, that probably plays into it a little bit.
Yeah, I think following Steve's point, I know from those German leagues, and the German professional league now has been going 2 weeks, and I know the stats of home team wins is way down to a point it's never been in any of the top leagues, which I read that stat the other day. Whatever the percentage was, it was ridiculous what it normally is on the home team compared to what it's been in these 2 rounds of games. So that definitely is real. But I mean, I'm sure there's also a purist side of it, though, that some of these guys, they just want to play their sport. I mean, that's the reality for most of them, and at most levels, some of them want a paycheck too, right? And if they don't go out there and play, then at some point that money's going to stop, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, obviously there's more that are affected than just the players, right? So it's all the people that work for the organizations, all the people that work for the venues. It impacts, people whose livelihood, who are not the actual players, are definitely affected by what's going on right now. And I mean, they're probably wondering, what do I do? Am I going to have a job? Do I have a job?
Yeah, it was pretty interesting from our perspective, because we did stop short of like, the highlight, right? So March is always the best for basketball, and then playoffs, is a kind of another level. And so it was actually pretty interesting for us to receive the feedback how disappointed people were that those games weren't going to be played, and I think it was a correlation with not only are we doing something right, but people are actually enjoying the product, and they have invested not only money, but they've invested time. They showed up to throughout the whole winter months to see the team play, and so that's a big loss. You're talking about people that are kind of missing out, and then it's interesting to go back and say, okay, we spend, as our season kind of correlates, we spend most of the summer working on building the business for the next year. But it's not the easiest thing to go out and ask people to renew their season tickets right now. And who knows? They don't know if they're going to have a job, and we can't tell them we're going to start in October like we usually are. We might start in December and go through July, and so there's just a lot of uncertainty with most of the aspects of the business right now.
Right.
Well, Steve, if you guys go into July next year, we're going to have a game at the ballpark, outdoor basketball game. But yeah, I think you hit it on the head about the staff, about careers. Our staff, we recently went through a staff reduction, either hours or temporary unpaid leaves, which is very unfortunate. But you got people that these are their careers, and they got families, and it's their passion. So I mean, the effects of it are just spider webs. When it comes to hey, on the surface they're not playing baseball. What does that do for the seasonal workers? What does that do for the front office people? Some people that realize that's their second job. When it comes to working at the ballpark, creating their first summer job. My three kids were going to work at the ballpark this year, and I was the first time I'm going to have all three of them working at the ballpark, and it was going to be a cool experience for me and our family. My kid was going to be on the grounds crew. The other two would be up, working the suites and promotional crew. So I mean, those are the type of stories that you really, really miss, and you realize that it's not just us; it's everybody else, and all the high school kids that can't have their first experience of actually this is what it is to go to a job and work out there and make the friends and make the memories and really take it to the next level about what sports can really, really endure you for. You might not be able to play it, but boy, you can definitely be a big part of it.
Yeah. So let me ask this. This is, since we're Stark Garden, each week we've been talking to different industries. We're talking to entrepreneurs. We're trying to get a feel for how businesses are faring during all this. And, for somebody who's running a business, who maybe it's just themselves, or maybe they're just starting out and they only have a couple of employees or whatever. The fact of the matter is, in times like this that are so uncertain, what's your mindset, or what would your advice be for somebody who's trying to stay the course and trying to keep things moving, trying to be positive? Like, how do you approach that every day when things are so uncertain?
Yeah, I think for us, I mean, like Jim alluded to earlier with the issues that you can have with the fire and stuff like that, like you're always planning for the worst, right? You're always making sure you're ready, and that anything can go wrong at any time. So financially and for security and for your staff, like you got to figure that out. I think what we've been hit with now is the worst of the worst of the worst. So a lot of us that did plan don't really know how, but I think you've got to stay strong to your beliefs and your values, like we do with our company, and I'm sure the guys do as well. And that's what, like, the soccer industry and the soccer sport, and whether you call it an industry or whatever you use in the word for, it's going to come back, right? There's no way we're going to have a world without it. So even if worst case we take a 12-month hiatus and we have to close the doors and we wait, it's going to allow us to get our thoughts together, be ready, and when it does come back, be better than ever before. So I think it's tough in our industry, and I'm sure most industries are like that. If you're an industry and you're a product and you're a program that people need and want, then it's going to come back. And I think that's the lifeblood of our business, at least, is that the people will come back as soon as it's safe, and we'll get back to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the aspect of just stay positive, but stay real. Because obviously stuff that we're facing, in the coming weeks about whether the season's played or not, you got to be a realist. Our thought was that if we could get started by June 25th, which would give us half the season, we'd be okay. And obviously, we're running into situations now that the calendar is against us, the time's against us. Every day you wake up, it seems like it's 2 days further away from where you were. But staying positive, realizing that we're in this together, and then really reaching out to people. I think that all of us are talk to people that we haven't talked to in months and years, possibly. We've shot emails back and forth, but we finally pick up the phone and talk to people and talked on a personal level, say, how are you doing? How's the family doing? And it's almost that time where, it's not time to sell that billboard or those tickets. It's time to say, we're here for you. We're here in this together. And I appreciate what you've done in the past, but let's stick together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great points by both guys. I think, from a business perspective, it's focusing on our ability to continue to pivot. I think we've had things pop up in the past, whether it's, again, weather or security or other things that we've had to sort of pivot on, and building an organization that the staff and everybody's committed to, at the end of the day, delivering, a good product and however we're able to do that. And so, I think it's important, again, to be able to pivot and keep an optimistic attitude that, again, hopefully this will pass. And when it does, we're going to be able to hit the ground running and pick up, where we left off. And in most cases, better for having got through it and maybe changing policies or something like that. So, at the end of the day, you just got to stay optimistic.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I mean, we, like I said, we've talked to so many different industries. Last week, we talked to the salon industry, who clearly are itching to get back. I mean, we're all itching for them to get back.
I need a haircut.
Yeah, why do I got this hat on?
I have never been a brunette in my life. It is blonde back here somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Restaurants, music venues. Next week, we're going to talk about, event space where, people are hosting events and weddings and things like that. I mean, this has been unbelievable. There is nothing that wasn't affected and touched by this. I mean, even Start Garden, not even Start Garden, but in our case, we have physical space that we're not using right now. And so what are we going to do with that? Are people going to feel comfortable coming back into a co-working environment? That was, one of the things that we had. So, and we still have, and we're planning on how to make that different so that people will feel comfortable. So there's just everything. It's touched everything in our entire world. And to me, it's mind-blowing. And it seems like it is the only thing that we're talking about. And so I do feel like conversations like this, and just, maybe talking about specific industries, but realizing that as people, we're all so affected and we're all in this together. I think somehow it's a little bit uplifting in knowing that people are trying and they're reaching out, and, everyone wants to get through this in the best way possible. So I appreciate so much that you guys took the time this morning to be here and to talk. And I know everybody's got a lot on their minds and a lot to think about and a lot to do. So, I really am grateful that you took time to be here this morning. So, does anybody have any comments as we wrap up?
I'll just say the sports industry, we will be back. And as Lewis alluded to, Steve, the same thing. I mean, we will see the crowds again. It's going to take a little bit, but the support of what Grand Rapids, what West Michigan does for all of us is incredible. And I'm proud to be saying that as an operator that we provide that facility for people to come out and have some fun. And we're going to get back to that, and we'll all be better for this. I mean, it's rough. As Lewis said, the worst of the worst of the worst right now. But man, it's going to seem that on the backside of it, that we got through this, and we're all going to be better for it as both individuals and as businesses.
Great. All right.
Jim, let me know if those kids need any in-office experience. And they can come down the street.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be out watching soccer, watching baseball, watching basketball really soon. So.
Yeah. Thanks,
Sounds
guys.
good.
And we look forward to being there too.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.